All right, and we are live. So today we are very lucky to have Jeff Patterson, who is the CEO of Gaggle and was also the previous CEO of two other companies, including Pixel Genius Entertainment and Harvard Fox. But as I was looking over your LinkedIn, what also really caught my attention was that you interned at Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated Limited. So also excited to talk about that. But
Yes.
yeah, thanks so much, Jeff, for being on the live.
No, good, good. Thanks for having me, Jordan. Yeah, I try to not take myself too seriously. So the reality is I kind of did intern at Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated. I worked for a crazy Israeli guy right out of college. And I learned a lot. I grew much bigger balls. How about that? Chutzpah.
Yeah. Yeah. Always when you're in the moment, I think it's a little bit difficult to see the light at the end of the tunnel or how this is going to be beneficial in the long run. But it's good that it helped develop a little thicker skin, especially when you were younger. But thanks so much, though, for having you on. And that is one of the things that I did want to get into. So you became the CEO of Gaggle, and you were the founder and you were the CEO. And it's been 26 years, correct me if I'm wrong, of you building this company up. So if you don't mind telling me a little bit of the story of how you went from, I guess, working at a finance company all the way to creating your own company and how that transition came to be.
Oh, look, I should start with I was just born as an entrepreneur. I My family tells stories of me at like 4 years old going door to door selling rocks. So I've been starting businesses since I was 5 years old. Most are utter failures are better than mediocrity, and some were mediocre. So those other two companies you mentioned, Pixel Genius Entertainment and Harvard Facts, they were not good, right? Barely break even, waste your life away. I did, as you sort of mentioned, I had one real job for 1 year of my life. I was an investment banker, and it felt like prison to me. Learned a lot of good stuff, but that's it just wasn't for me. I was just born. I was just born to be an entrepreneur, and you keep failing until you succeed.
Awesome. We have a lot of people here who watch the lives on Facebook and on Instagram, and even myself too, who just started off with their entrepreneurial journey, or maybe they're already deeper in. But can you tell us about even some of the turbulent times that you had and like how you also kept that mental resilience of keep going until you found Gaggle and what it's like when you actually found the beginning of something that could have potential to work out?
Uh, Look, there just was never any choice about what I was going to do and keep doing until it succeeded. But let me. I'm trying to think where I should. Where's a good fun place to start? I think it was just always in my blood, right? But maybe it's worth talking about Gaggle and what my current company does and what my vision for it is. So basically, after that second company, Pixel Genius Entertainment, really went into the crapper. Me and a partner I met at an investment banker, we started this company. When we'd finish at 9 o'clock at night, we'd start working on this company. We eventually got that company. There were two companies we did this one. The first one sold fax machines mail order. We thought we were going to be the Michael Dell of fax machines. It was stupid. We got it up to $1 million of revenue out of his parents, basically out of his apartment, but the gross margins were 8%. Not a good business. But we would sit around and read Forbes and Fortune magazine all the day, every day, and just debate and argue about businesses. We read about a couple that made a software company for education, so we thought, well, they did it, we can do it. And so that was the genesis of Pixel Genius Entertainment. That was an educational CD-ROM company that we started. He eventually met a young woman at a bar whose family was very wealthy, and if you ever become business partners with someone, I highly recommend not being the poor person in the partnership. The poorer person works harder. I became the poorer person. So he moved on to greener pastures. I was flailing a little bit. Then as an entrepreneur, you ask questions, and I tell people I have big ears. So I was at an educational conference, and I happened to ask a teacher. I asked her, hey, are you guys using email with your students? And this was a long time ago, probably even before you were born, Jordan. So I asked her this question, and she said, no, my school would never let the kids have an email address. And you're an entrepreneur. We ask why. Well, why is that? She said, oh, well, who are the kids going to talk to? What are they going to talk about? How are we going to keep it safe? Young entrepreneur, well, I'll solve that problem, right? That's what entrepreneurs do. Of course, we have no idea how we're going to do these things, but we just say we'll do it. So that was the genesis of Gaggle, right? We were safe email for students. I started this really the idea was in 1998, really launched in 1999, and had to pivot along the way. But that's a lot. I try not to monologue too much, Jordan. What questions out of what I've just shared do you have?
Well, it's interesting to see that, first off, the transition that you had, because the CD-ROM company, and correct me if I'm mistaken with this, it was already an educational company, so you were already kind of in that field, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the transition from going from one company to another company wasn't like you were starting completely anew. When the companies were failing, did you have a lot of people also like in your ear telling you that, oh, you should just go back to working in finance, or this entrepreneurship thing, it might not be for you? And how did you deal with that?
Well, if they said it, I didn't hear it. Right? Look, it's one of the skills and traits of an entrepreneur is that grit, as Angela Duckworth says. Although I just read Quit by Annie Duke, which basically sometimes, we have to be careful not to keep running a marathon when we have a broken leg. Mm-hmm. So no one was telling me specifically to quit, but there was some awareness that it wasn't working. Right? And of course, when you're an entrepreneur, you're generally focused on change anyway. Most entrepreneurs have a great idea every single day. The challenge is saying no to our ideas and trying to stay focused.
Yeah, not going for the shiny object syndrome when there's all these trends coming up. Even with with AI too. When AI pops up and then everyone's like, oh, you have to go into like the AI space, but you already have something that's working. It's all about not getting distracted by the shiny objects sometimes.
Yeah. And look, and I see one business as a platform for the next. Right?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
You've got relationships, you've got knowledge, maybe you have some infrastructure, a team, and so you use that to leverage into your next market.
No, absolutely. Well, and even talking about software as a service is an interesting business to be in. And I always heard that and you correct me if I'm wrong with this one too, but people say that gone are the days of if you build something, they'll come. How important is the go-to-market strategy versus having a good product?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think having the great product comes first, right? Who cares if you got a go-to-market strategy if it's crap and people use it once and don't keep using it? I mean, really a SaaS business is all about, repeat users, and essentially annual or monthly recurring revenue. And if you don't have a great product as a SaaS company that's going to keep people coming back or keep people paying, who cares what your go-to-market is?
And how was it getting those first initial users? What was your strategy back in the day?
Well, we should probably stop and I should explain what Gaggle is a little bit more specifically. So when we started Gaggle, it was, as I said, safe email for students, or safe email where the teachers are in control. Right, we've since pivoted, and there's what we pivot to is really far more fascinating than what we were doing back then. But I hustled, right? I would email, I'd find educators who were presenting at conferences, and I'd send them an email. I'd say, hey, I see you're presenting on X or Y that was tangentially related to what I was doing. I'd say, if you're interested, I'd be glad to send you some free t-shirts to raffle off or different things, right? So it was all word of mouth, right? I would go to some conferences in the space and I would stand at my booth and talk to anybody who would walk by, but it was sweat, lots of sweat equity.
Yeah, I can imagine. Even the first few years, just getting things off the ground, just getting your name out there is usually the hardest years.
It let me tell you a little bit more about Gaggle, and you'll see why it was especially hard. So, when I launched in 1999, God, I feel old. It was the first .com boom, the boom and bust, right? And people were running around by, oh, how many eyeballs do you have? It was so ridiculous. We didn't even know how to count page views. We counted eyeballs. We wasn't sure if the people had one eyeball or two, right? That's how ridiculous it was. People were just doing press releases. I could not raise any money. No one would trust me. But I was young and stubborn, and so I just started building the company anyway. I've never taken any outside funding. Today we're about 160 employees. But that means going very, very slow and steady and not giving up. On the other hand, I'm so fortunate because I'm beholden to no one. I don't even have a board of directors. If some great idea comes out of this conversation, Jordan, I will just do it tomorrow.
It's amazing. And it's rare to hear too. I want to go into like the transition of what Gaggle like was at the beginning and then what it came to be, but it's amazing that this was like a bootstrapped company. And I think I heard this in another podcast too, that you mentioned this. So tell me a little bit about what that was like. What was Gaggle back in 1999 all the way till now, and what are the major accomplishments that it's done, and what has it transitioned from into?
Sure. So we started as a web-based email, right? Hotmail, where the teachers were in control. And we were going to make money on advertisements because that's how the world worked back then. We did do banner ads. We put just enough banner ads to annoy people into paying for the premium version. And I was upfront about that. Schools started asking us for other tools like message boards. Can you make us safe message boards? Because safety was our secret sauce. They asked for message boards. They asked for file storage. They asked for blogs, all those things, but they want to have safety baked into it. About 3.5 years in is when we discovered a funding source in education that allowed schools to purchase Gaggle at a discount. And so that's when things really started to take off. And so that was, back till 2005, 2006. Right? We're essentially a learning management system with safety is our secret, what made us better. Around 2007, one of our districts reached out to us and said, hey, we like Gaggle and all, but we're going to try this Gmail thing. Can you put your safety inside of Gmail? And again, I'm an entrepreneur. I say yes, right? I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I say yes. So we ended up putting our safety inside of Gmail, and that's really where the company has evolved. We're really safety behind other tools. And to explain that, let me tell a story. And I'm going to warn folks that my stories are never pleasant, but they end as well as they can. These are some heavy, heavy topics. So it's a true story. We're monitoring the Google and the Office workspace environments for any sort of threat. So this is a true story that happened with a school district partner in New Jersey a few years ago. It was a Friday evening, and a middle school boy pulled out his Google Chromebook from the school. He started creating a Google document. And the document said, I'm tired of faking my feelings. I have no one who loves me, not even my family. My only choice left is suicide. Our technology pulls in this Google document. The technology highlights things that are concerning, items that are concerning. Then we have a human team that's reviewing these 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we're trying to basically not miss anything and do it fast. The safety person sees this, recognizes this as a credible threat. Our safety person calls the school. They get a hold of the principal. The principal started calling home while the assistant principal called the local authorities. When the principal got a hold of the parents said, "What? No, our son is fine. We just finished dinner. He's upstairs in his room." But when they went to look for their son, he wasn't there. This is why it was so important that they partnered well with their local authorities. The local authorities knew that there was this spot in New Jersey where the trains run through on their way to New York City, and 2 kids had previously jumped in front of the train at this one spot. They found the boy walking to that location, and it all happened within 15 minutes. We're monitoring for bullying, threats of fighting, weapons at school, depression, anxiety, cutting, abuse at home, everything you can imagine. We made over 22,000 emergency phone calls last year, we sent about another 420,000 emailed alerts that were concerning but didn't seem urgent. And that's what Gaggle does, and it's a great mission to have.
And that's crazy. And even considering you're at that age, I saw that your software dealt with like actually, what's the age that your software deals between?
So we're generally working with K through 12 students, some in Canada, but mostly in the United States, and mostly we use from grades 3 up, so about 8 years old to 18.
Because even with the fact that everybody has phones now, like kids have phones probably like when they're 12, 11, and it's so hard to like monitor exactly what your kids are watching on their phone and seeing on their phone, and how was this also in a way kind of a response to so many kids having the accessibility to these devices?
It really predates the iPhone, right? So we started doing that monitoring of Google, I say back down in 2007, and even back then, like our chief innovation officer, she's been with Gaggle for 18 years, and she tells the story of she was visiting customers in North Carolina, and back then we didn't have safety analysts that were monitoring. Our regular employees would just get on and do the work periodically, and for some reason she had to pull over. She saw some blocked messages, and she ended up seeing a suicide note back in 2007. Right, so this predates. Now the release of the iPhone coincides with the massive increase in student mental health issues and suicide. So there's definitely a correlation there, but this was going on long before the devices.
Yeah. And those are like the most vulnerable ages as well, where this kind of stuff happens. I saw what I was mentioning to you also behind before the live was that I saw your tugboat conference when you were speaking, and it wasn't. This was like one of so many stories that had already happened. So it's not like this is the very first thing. I also saw that on your website too, and I might be a little bit off with this one, but there's also counseling as well, or counselors that you have available on Gaggle. How does you and your team, how do you figure out what exactly like new features to add to this software in order to enhance the benefits that it could have for students?
Let me talk about the therapy for a minute. I used to tell people, and sometimes I still do, I said, sometimes I hate my own company. People are like, what, Jeff, what are you talking about? How do you hate your own company? You guys save lives. I said, I feel like I'm your friend that comes over to the barbecue at your house. You've got 3 dogs, and I'm standing in the grass, and I'm pointing out the dog poop, right? Hello, you're a teacher, you got 30 kids, you know you have these problems, right? I want to be the type of company, the type of friend that picks up a shovel and does something about the dog poop, right? And I don't mean to say kids are dog poop, but these situations are shitty. And so that's why I wanted us to do something more than just point out the problems. That's why we launched Gaggle Therapy, which is licensed therapists that work with the kids, mental health crisis line. These are the directions that I want us to go, to be more than just someone who points out the problem, but someone who helps solve the problem.
Awesome. And
in terms of how, well, I didn't even answer your question, Jordan. So the, you guys have probably heard this quote before. Henry Ford said, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, right? So I think it's important to me to be with our customers and prospects and the people who are working with the students and asking a lot of questions and listening for problems that I can solve. And that's, to me, as I said earlier, I feel like my superpower is having really big ears, asking those good questions. I won't take at face value what they say they want because they don't really know what's possible. They're seeing it through the lens of what's currently there.
And is that kind of also a way, just on the software development side of it, for people that are working on creating their next software or have the intention to, what is your style of how you pull out a feature, test it, see if it's something that is feasible and that people want? And if ever there's been a time where you've had to retract a feature, how does that testing phase usually go?
All right, so we have a set of unique core values at Gaggle. One of them, most of my company hates, Jordan. I know it. They don't say it to my face, but they hate it. It's the core value is innovation over perfection. And that means we need to try a lot of things and experiment and fail, right? It's important to have those failures and see where things are working or not working. So to me, the only way I know how to do is to have instincts, talk to customers, get some feedback, and then just build something and let them see it. Let them tell you how it's wrong. Let them tear you to shreds even so that you can do better.
This, the thing you mentioned at the very beginning too of the interview was that you kind of started to develop some thick skin from working with in finance and working for a particular boss. Did that also help when you, like you said right now, you have to like tear up ideas? What part of that when you were working in finance helped with the difficult parts of creating this company, especially since you have to deal with like such heavy topics too?
When I think back to that 1 year at the investment bank, right? First of all, like I was more of a math engineering kid. I did econ and math, and like typos, I didn't care about typos, but like this one associate just beat the crap out of me about typos. That was good. Learning how to do financial models, I still pull up the spreadsheet and I'll make my own projections and models for things that are important for something that we're trying that's new. It was really a work ethic that we had there. It's hard for me to say what things I learned other than I really don't trust the stock market. I know I've got friends that are day traders. I'm like, you realize you're gambling with people who have more information? You're the sucker at the table. I don't trust financial statements. I know they're just a guess and they're being manipulated. So I'm not a big believer in the stock market. I do have some stocks, right? But I try to invest like Warren Buffett for the long term. And I know that public companies' financial statements, even private equity financial statements, are manipulated.
Well, I'm going to kind of do like a hard right turn with this one too, just because I did want to also get onto your LinkedIn. And that was actually one of the ways too that I found you, was your incredible amount of followers on LinkedIn. How did that come to be? How did you come to be like putting all these types of posts on LinkedIn and putting these? A lot of your posts are like AI generated, and you mentioned before too that like you try not to take a lot of things too seriously. How is it that you created that momentum on LinkedIn, and why?
Well, I think if you're for a content creator out there, you have to find an authentic voice, right? And it's not about you; it's about other people, right? It's how do you add value to other people, not just talk about the things that are interesting to you or self-promote. So this started even before the pandemic. I was helping some people find jobs. Then the pandemic hit, and in March 2020, the world was a scary place. People were getting laid off left and right with no severance. People were afraid that we're all going to die. And I knew that my company had a couple open positions, and I knew a few other companies that were hiring. And I thought, the world just needs to see something positive. So I posted a list of a few companies, including my own, that were hiring. And it was well received. People wanted to see that. And I posted again 2 weeks later. And so then I just kept doing that. I'd post jobs, mostly, almost all, for other companies, not my own, helping people find jobs. For a while I was doing, and I might still do virtual job fairs for people. So I just started posting these open jobs in my industry. So I want to be very narrow within the influence area I wanted was with my niche, the education technology space. I just posted number 400. Actually, I have two series. One is edtech jobs. One is engineering and software edtech jobs. I got 400 on the first list and 800 on the second list. And it just started growing my LinkedIn presence because that people wanted to follow, people wanted to connect. You can only have 30,000 connections on LinkedIn, by the way. So if you're trying to grow a network, switch to follow as your default, not connect. I remember at one point we were talking at dinner about my posts with my daughters, and my youngest daughter said, "Dad, until you have 100,000 followers, you're nobody." So I said, "Okay, girl, game on." And then I worked a little bit harder. I was probably around 80,000 at the time. I got past 100,000, and so like any good teenage girl, she changed the metric. I can never please her, at least not openly. I think I'm now around 145,000. LinkedIn has changed, though. I think there's a lot more people posting. There's the algorithms have changed, so my views of my job lists used to get 80,000 views, and now they're probably about 35,000. I think it's just changed. You referenced AI in an effort to sort of boost the views, right? And it's not helping me any. I don't monetize this in any way, but I want to help the job seekers and help the companies that are trying to hire. I started adding AI-generated photos with my face in different scenarios. I'm doing this mostly just to have fun. So I like. People have said some of my photos are unhinged, and my favorite one, I had a series of if you've ever seen the Old Spice commercials where the good-looking guy's on the horse, "Ladies, look at me, I'm a man, I'm on a horse, now look at your man, look at me, look down." So there's one of me with my face on his body on the horse, then on a dolphin, and then as a centaur in a bathroom. But I'm just having fun with it, right? Jordan, I'm dying. I mean, it might be another 50, 60 years, but I'm eventually going to die. So I need to live my best life while I can.
Yeah, it's good that you don't take life too seriously. And also that, I think that when you have kids, they humble you a lot too.
God.
Your daughter's saying that you weren't anybody online until you had the 100,000, and then she keeps racking the bar up. So they're your worst critics. If you think you are, if you have kids.
It's really been great to see, and I will run into people at conferences and things, and people sometimes say, "Wait, I know you. Oh my God, you're that guy, right?" And they tell me a story about how they found a job. Sometimes people have gone through 2 jobs from my posts, and I'm just so glad to be able to help people, reach their level of success, reach their opportunities.
Amazing. With I really like the tugboat talk that you were doing, and even as a little bit going back to the business aspect of it, and since we have a lot of people who are entrepreneurs who watch, one of the things that you mentioned were strategy, and how typically like when you went to like an offsite, and then in the offsite people were talking about things like goals, like they wanted to hit like some kind of yearly revenue, but you're like, that's like a goal, that's not necessarily a strategy. Can you talk a little bit about strategy and how you perceive the direction of your company with the strategy that your team makes, and how you differentiate the strategy versus the goals?
I'm passionate about this topic. I'd be glad to talk about it. But let me talk a little bit about what tugboat is, since you mentioned it twice.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned earlier, I've never taken any venture capital funding, and basically I didn't know this, but I'm a believer in a business philosophy called evergreen, and this is important for young entrepreneurs to know. There are other ways of doing business, better ways, I believe. So evergreen philosophy is not about the exit. Most entrepreneurs are like, I had an exit, I had a successful exit, I made this amount of money. Fuck that, right? That is. I don't want to be someone who just chases money. I want to chase purpose and meaning in life. And evergreen is about the journey. It's about making a difference in the world, both for, in my case, students and schools, and my staff and the world writ large. Tugboat, I can't believe I'm so lucky to have found it. It's a group of about 250 CEOs that are also evergreen. There are companies in Tugboat that are 4th generation. One started before the American Revolutionary War. It's a different mindset about how to do business and making a difference for your staff and the world. And there's some big companies. Enterprise Rent-A-Car, $25 billion in revenue, is a member of Tugboat and an evergreen company. So that's Tugboat. I'm really happy to be part of that group, and I encourage anybody who wants to make a difference in the world as a founder CEO to consider it. Strategy. Oh my God. So I recognize that we had some challenges on our horizon. I recognized this about 4 years ago as a company, and I started reading every strategy book that I could. I reread Michael Porter, if you guys know. He's the founder almost of business strategy. I read 8 different books. Some of them I read 2 and 3 times. My favorite book on strategy is called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy by Richard Rommel. And what you alluded to, Jordan, is that he clearly defines bad strategy as just goal setting. It's just your aspirations. It's not how you're going to get there. Real strategy is about identifying a problem. What is the challenge that we're trying to overcome? And then he says, what is the guiding principle of how we're going to overcome that challenge? And then what are the steps the actions that we're going to take to implement that strategy? A good strategy has to look at what everybody else is doing and do something different. Copying what everybody else is doing is not strategy. And most of what people talk about in strategy, a SWOT analysis, that's not strategy. Right? So I'm really keyed in on what strategy first isn't, and then how we're going to create a differentiated strategy. And there's no right or wrong answer, right? You can take, one company can have strategy of being the premium solution, and another company be like, we're the low-cost solution. That is fine. Those are 2 distinct strategies that can both succeed. Anyway, I'm monologuing again, Jordan. Ask me a question, direct me where you want me to talk.
Well, you also mentioned the 7 Ps, and I don't have them on me, but I'm sure that you have them at your top of your head. How does that link with the strategy?
Well, it's first of all, I'm not good at remembering all the 7 Ps: people, purpose, pace, growth. I can't remember them all, but because they're over. We fit into Tugboat as Gaggle, but it's not exactly what we do. There's actually something called Certified Evergreen. I'm not that. But paced growth, right? That's a really important one. That we want to grow, so we want pragmatic innovation. Those are 2 of them. Those things are important for our long-term strategy, but they're not strategy on their own, in my opinion. They shape who we are and how we approach strategy, but it's not the strategy itself as not being evergreen, right? That can play into the strategy. It's part of our differentiation, right? Our customers know they're going to get better customer service for us and that we're not selling out. They're not going to have to change vendors in 2 years because we sold out to some big company that just whittled us away.
Yeah. And now even looking back on it, because I want to keep it within the time frame, but now looking back on your 26 years and then the 2 other companies beforehand, what piece of advice would you give yourself when you were starting, let's say even the first 2 companies before Gaggle? Is there one particular piece of advice you would give to them?
Let me think about that, but I want to share some advice I got from another entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because it really has shaped me. And this was my old business partner from those 2 previous businesses. He met a girl whose father owned a company called Chef America. And you're thinking, what's Chef America? But you know this company. If you've ever had a Hot Pocket. And I remember as a young entrepreneur going out to visit his factory, right? And we're standing in his office, and one of the things he said to us is like, you young entrepreneurs are trying to go too fast, right? It took me 5 years to reach my 1-year goal. But once I got there, things sort of compounded on each other. They grew much faster. And so the message there was to slow down, take our time. There are no shortcuts. That was really an important lesson. And the second lesson I took away from that meeting, we're watching these giant trucks of flour come in, and eggs and cheese and giant vats of mixing things, and there's this conveyor belt down below. So it's sort of cooking and packaging. And he points down to that conveyor system. He says, see that system? That was broken last year. And I was struggling trying to get it to work, and I kept trying to work and fix it, and I'd have somebody on the team work on it. and I couldn't get it fixed. And then suddenly I remembered money is for solving problems. And I found the person who was the biggest expert on the system. They're on the other side of the country. I flew them here. I didn't care about the cost because I needed to have that solved, and I had the money to solve it. And so those are two pieces of philosophy that I took out. That shaped me. If I was to sort of go back to my younger self, it would probably be about a little bit more forgiveness of myself, right? Understanding there's going to be some challenges and hard times, and that my mental mindset was everything about ultimate success, right? Slowing down, not letting every disappointment, and there's one every day, keep me down.
Yeah, that's crazy. And it's also crazy how there's so much wisdom in a single hot pocket.
Yeah, and there's a lot of wisdom in those hot pockets. Look, I would also encourage entrepreneurs to read a lot, right? Or if you're not a good reader, you're not a great reader, then do audiobooks. But I have a spreadsheet, and it's titled Read Books, Be Awesome. And I started back in 2017 writing down every book that I was reading and something rereading, and just I'm constant. I have a long list of books I would like to read so that I can expand my thinking and my mindset.
No, that's crazy, because I want to take this in two different directions, but I'm wondering which one is the most time friendly. Because a lot of times I think a lot of entrepreneurs who also watch these live streams can get very disheartened because, well, when they're posting, even if they're posting like on LinkedIn or on all these like social platforms, of course, that like kids nowadays are watching on their phone, they can see like the entrepreneur who's like making $100 million at the age of 18 and has bought himself his like dream car or her dream car at that age. And it's like super key to be tunnel vision. I think like the hot pocket guy, he had it right, kind of just like putting your head down and just...
Jordan, he sold Hot Pockets 15, 20 years ago for $3.2 billion. Right? That's the power of slow, steady compounding.
Yeah. Did you also see that too? Even when you were working at Gaggle, that there was like years where just like it would be so steady, and then all of a sudden it would be exponential and then back down and so on and so forth?
Oh, it's a disaster some years. I've actually gone backwards in revenue 25% over 1 year, and that was very, very painful, depressing. I did 2 rounds of layoffs. Basically, I would take multiple showers in a day. If I got to 3 o'clock without having a drink, that was a good day. I was definitely depressed, and that lasted for about 6 weeks. It's not easy. It's not easy life being an entrepreneur. There's going to be lots of ups and downs, and it's important not to try to compare ourselves to everybody else. When you look on social media, people are putting out their best version of themselves. Oh, I'm on vacation with my wife, and we're having the greatest time ever. They don't talk about how angry they are at their wife about whatever they're over. People put on a fake version of themselves. Even when someone says, I made $100 million, I don't believe it. Just like I don't believe stock markets, I don't believe exactly what people write on social media.
Yeah. And it's just hard to differentiate. But even you telling this story as well, I feel like the people that are watching and they're like going through these difficult times, because I again too, like I'm definitely on like a smaller scale than you, but there's definitely those days where you just like feel that it's like significantly difficult, and then it doesn't get out of it, and then something happens that like one day that changes everything around, and sometimes you didn't even see it coming, but it's a matter of putting your head down and just...
Jordan, what do you think for you kicks you out of that state of semi-depression?
I run a lot. I really like to... I go on like very, very long runs, and just like without music or anything. And once I come back, it clears my head a little bit. And also one of the things I know it's like super, super cheesy, but it's so easy to focus on the things that are going wrong, because maybe it's like a survival instinct or something like that. But when you think about like all the things that have gone right up to this point, it really puts things into perspective of how lucky you are to be where you are. And I think that's very, very much overlooked. Not even in entrepreneur lives, but just in people's lives in general.
You made a good point. As CEO, I'm so focused on what's not working, what's not good enough for me, and almost everything is not good enough for me, right? So it's easy to basically be focused on the negative our whole lives as we're trying to drive to something. For a while, like when I was down, I would do a happiness journal in the morning. I'd write down the things I was happy about, and that's kind of what you talked about, right?
Yeah, exactly. And especially even the notion of writing it down too. Do you keep a journal by chance on you? Like
I don't
even still?
keep a journal. I have a notebook. I keep notes from my meetings, and then I have not anything fancy on my MacBook. I have a notepad. I have my work items, things I'm working on, and it's so, my God, I don't even scroll to the bottom anymore because there's so many things in it, but I just like to write down things I need to work on and knock them off slow and steady.
Yeah. I have one, like I even have I don't know if she's watching, but there's someone who works at our company who makes fun of, she teases me because I have a notebook and I write every single thing in the notebook because or else I completely just forget you think that you're going to remember something in the moment, or at least I'll speak for myself. I think I'm going to remember something in the moment when I need to, and I never do. So if I don't write it down.
All right, so I use a spiral bound, but yes. I've got a big stack of them from the past, and it's kind of nice to know that I can go back to them, but I never do.
Yeah. Well, let me wrap it up with I hope we can fit in like 2 more questions, but
All right.
I won't keep you in overtime. In terms of technology, since you are the SaaS guy of 26 years, what do you think the future of technology is going to look like, in particular with the implementation of AI in the next 10, 20 years?
Oh, God, it's hard to sort of predict what the future is going to be. I go to a quote from Jeff Bezos, right? And in this article I read, he was quoted as someone said, Jeff, what's going to change in the next 5 and 10 years? And he said, yeah, that's an interesting question. It's a good question, but there's a better question. The better question is what's not going to change in the next 10 and 20 years? Because I can build a business around what's not going to change. And in the case of Amazon, he said it was basically lower prices and more selection. And so investing in those things paid off for him in the long run. It's always worth it doing. So when I think about where things are going, and I spend a lot of time thinking about where things are going, but it's a guess. It's a very bizarre, half wrong, 2/3 wrong guess. AI is going to change and make us more efficient in many ways. Already seeing that my software development team is getting much more efficient, right? We've always been using machine learning and AI for 15 years. We have a 6-person machine learning team at Gaggle. We're not implementing AI as much in other departments. We have a customer support chatbot that's not working very well. But I think it's going to go there. I think other teams like finance and HR are going to have different AI tools that are going to help them do their job. So I think our people are going to get more efficient. But what's not going to change is the need for human interaction. Someone behind that AI, someone who basically partners with the prospects, the customers, whatever they're doing. I don't think we can just rely on AI. That's a world I don't think I want to live in where it's like my bot talks to your bot, Jordan. So what, 10 years from now, we're not even here? Our bots are doing this interview, this podcast? That's crazy. Someone will do it though. I just don't think it'll be that, it'll cease being entertaining.
No, I definitely agree. I think that the human touch and the human interaction is something that's always going to be needed unless you want to go into a very bleak dystopia.
There's going to be some dystopian times ahead of us, right? When many jobs, taxi drivers, truck drivers, probably going to go away. And I think the biggest implication will be for third world countries where we've been outsourcing work to. I think there would be some real disruption in those economies.
And the last question that I wanted to leave you with, or ask you, I should say, is we kind of touched on it of like going back in time or like giving advice, but I want to make this as specific as possibly can. I'm not 25, but I'm a little bit older than that. And you mentioned some of the things of like the Hot Pockets guy's advice, and you going back and saying being a little bit like more empathetic with when you were starting off your business. But if you could go back in time, what particular advice what specific piece of advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
Oh, I probably would have dreamt a little bit bigger. I would have gone for something, if I was starting over, I'd go for something bigger, even more impactful. But with that knowledge of slow, steady, small steps to get there.
Perfect. It's not what do they say? It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right?
Life is not a sprint, it's a marathon.
That's why I do long distance running. But thank you so much, Jeff. To keep it within time. And thank you so much for jumping on this podcast. So again, this is Jeff Patterson, the CEO of Gaggle. And of course, interning at Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated, which I love his LinkedIn post. So please also check out Jeff on his LinkedIn. If there's any other place that they can find you, Jeff, do you mind letting me know?
I am on Instagram, so I'm trying to build a following there. I don't even know what my Instagram... Oh, it might be Josho Jeff, right? That's the cult leader name I want is Josho. Right, there's a whole story behind that. If someone bestowed that name on me, and I'm proud to go with it.
Perfect. Well, I'll be there for the inauguration.
All right.
Well, thanks so much, Jeff. And again, thank you for having me on.
All right. Thank you, Jordan.
And we are stopping the live